so it's a little bit after 1 o'clock. A few more people might file in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so as I mentioned, today is going to be a general run through of SMMware. We're going to start with this blue section, talking about clients and leads and jobs through invoices. And then we have a section in green. We're going to talk about our resources section, which is organizations and contacts. We're going to talk about calendaring and tasks and notes and calls. And we're also going to talk about our integrations. Again, we're going to start here in the section in blue. So everybody should be able to see the home screen. See if I can hide myself so you can get a little bit better view of the screen. For Janelle, you can communicate through the chat, but there is not an audio component for the participants. All right, so we're going to get going. We're starting here on the home page of SMMware, and we're going to assume that someone has called you for the first time. So this is a sales opportunity. I'm going to create a new sales lead. As I mentioned, this is assuming that this is a brand new call. If this was an existing client, they would be part of this list, but they're not. So we're going to go ahead and put in a new entry for the client. By the way, if you have questions as we go, feel free to jump in. I'm here to make sure that things get explained to you. And you know, I don't want you to leave with any questions unanswered if you have some. I would like to explain that the fundamental records in SMMware consist of a client record, which is what we're looking at now. And that contains information about somebody that does not change when they move from place to place. So your email address, your phone number, things like that, they don't change when you move. We also have some client custom fields. You can put whatever labels you want on them. But again, the important part is that this is information that does not change when they move. So if somebody prefers to be called after a certain time of day or not after a certain time of day, then you can put that into the custom fields. And don't get hung up on the exact values that I put into those labels. You would be able to put in whatever ones you want. We can also put in an address here. This is the address that they were in when you first met them. And we're assuming that they're living in a senior living community such that you would like to have the address pre-filled for you. If they are living in a single family home, you can just go ahead and type the address in directly. While we're on this page, you can see here that this is who referred the business to you. And SMMware offers 3 fields instead of just one. A lot of programs just have the name of the person, but we're also collecting the categories such as website or lawyer or realtor. And that way we can power a referrals report that can answer questions like, where did my business come from the 3rd quarter of last year? So again, this is the client record. We're going to go back to the sales lead record, which we had started earlier. So the 3 records that are kind of the core in SMMware are that client record. Each time that somebody contacts you with an opportunity, that is a separate sales lead record. Each time somebody wants to hire you, there are going to be details that are different. It could be that you're moving them to a different address. There's a different realtor. You have some photos that you might be taking of the property before you even win the work. So we have the client record, the sales lead record, and then if you win the work, which hopefully you do, then you have a job record. So I created the client. Now I'm back on the sales lead. Another thing that might change from one sales lead to the next is who the lead salesperson is, depending on the size of your organization. Here we have the sales lead status, and this is programmable. The list is customizable is what I'm trying to say. A lot of the lists in SMMware are, in fact, something that you can modify to your own needs. This is one of them. And I'm going to choose in progress. The job type is meant to be a single label that kind of tells you what kind of work it's going to be. Sometimes the work is very specific, like estate clean out. Sometimes it's more a mishmash of services, and you might choose something more generic like move management services, things like that. And we have some custom fields here for the sales lead. And these are, again, you can change the label however you want. We have 28 of them. And these are going to be for information that changes when they move from place to place, like the elevator code or which day the garbage comes. And once again, we can put in an address that they're moving to. We can type it in directly, or we can put in the name of a center, senior living center. I'd like to point out that the status board, that's going to be useful on the home page, on your dashboard. And you can define if this is the tag that you can set up your own tags. You can have more tags or fewer tags, different labels, different colors. It's up to you. And there's some pre-defined text that you can have in the field. And that is a common theme throughout SMMware, where we will pre-fill a field with information that they're like headers that tells people what information you want to collect when they create one of those records. You go ahead and save this. SMMware has a couple of automations. For instance, if a customer says that they're going to make a decision in, say, the end of January, and then you save, SMMware will create a task. It'll assign that task to the lead salesperson. It'll give it a due date that matches the customer's decision date, and you'll get a reminder email, or the lead salesperson will get a reminder email on that date. So that way, basically, SMMware is tapping you on the shoulder, saying that, hey, it's time to talk to the client because they said they're going to make a decision right around now. Another automation that we offer is when you submit a quote to them, and then you would put in the dates that you actually gave them the quote. And in our configuration, you can say that when that happens, that you get a reminder 1 week out or 2 weeks out, or whatever you set that to. We also help you keep track of some other things. We offer a scoring system that will weight the score based on how old it is, how old the lead is, how much it's worth, various things that you can also modify the weights for so as to get a sense of how important this lead is to you. If you wind up in a position where you have more leads than you can follow up on, the scoring can help you prioritize some of them. We also tell you the age of the sales lead. I'm going to go ahead and create a quote. So the sales lead is the place where you store information that is not part of the quote. The quote is, here's what we're going to do for you, how much it's going to cost, and what the schedule is going to be, things like that. Here within SMMware, creating a quote is a question of mixing and matching the various building blocks that we offer you. Here's a list of those blocks. But after you've worked with the system for a while, you're going to create and use templates. So here's an example template. And it will fill in the defaults that you had set up. And I will go through some of the blocks that we offer. This is a client block. It pulls in the client's information. This is a header block. It has large, bold text. And it's just a way of visually dividing up your quote. We have line items. We have some text blocks. We have a summary block that adds it all up. We have a legal block, which is useful for the e-signing. And for e-signing, for anybody who's going to sign it, you need to have the name and how you're going to contact them, which you can put in directly into one of these tags. And we also have shortcuts that allow you to put the shortcut into the template, and then when you get into the actual quote and it goes to send it, it will swap out things that are appropriate. So this tag that says client will be swapped out for the client's name, and where it says email, that'll be swapped out for the client's email, and maybe the spouse's email, and so on. Within a quote, the areas that have a gray background are being calculated for you or pulled in from somewhere else. So then you would not be modifying them directly. But the other fields within the quote that do not have a gray background, you can just go ahead and start modifying them as you like. And adding more blocks, you can you can reorder the blocks, you can insert new blocks, and so on. SMMware offers two different ways of how you charge your clients. In one approach, you're going to assume that every single hour in the job has the exact same hourly rate. And that is a simple approach that doesn't require any setup. And we call that a per job rate because there's only one rate for the entire job. The other approach is called job codes. A job code is simply a label and a rate. So that way you can charge more for, like if the owner's on site and doing work and maybe packing, and then you have somebody who just started with the company 2 days ago, they would have different rates and they would use different job codes when they're filling in their hours. And we'll talk a little bit more about job codes shortly. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and save this. After you've given somebody the first quote, I'm sure that you've all had the experience where they make some changes and want to get a new copy. So I'm going to copy the sales lead and save it. And where it used to say quote number 1, it's quote number 2. Within SMMware, instead of having a single list of all your quotes and they're a mixture of all the ones for different clients, what we do is we have, for your sales quotes, we have a list of your clients, and then we have the quotes are gathered together under that given sales lead, which I'll show you that again in a moment. So now we've created quote 2. This box is a place where you can write yourself a note. It's not part of the PDF that the client will see. So this is the web-based view of the quote. And then here's what that looks like as a PDF. You would have your own header image up here instead of this generic SMMware one, but you can get a sense of what the client would see. We can also email that same PDF as an attachment to the client. So someone's already filling the email address, this subject line, and this text for the body of the email that is coming from the configuration editor, and you can modify it as you like. And you can also put a semicolon and add more recipients or CC people and so on. This button right here for e-signing is how you would initiate that process. It would translate the various e-signing tags and contact the various people involved with an invitation to sign the quote. So coming back to the sales lead, when we first created this, there was a button that says new quote. And then now that we've created a couple of quotes, it gives us the opportunity to edit quote 1 or quote 2. I mentioned before that this is a place for information above and beyond the quote, and included that in that would be any pictures that you take or other files that you want to store. So here I am. I can do this off my hard drive of the laptop, but you could do this off your phone as well. And I'm multi-selecting, and you can see the long cryptic file names that a phone might assign. I go ahead and select my photos. I'm going to click on the auto rename function because I don't like those long cryptic file names. SMMware also offers you the ability to tag those photos, and you can customize the list of tags. The thinking is that you would walk into a room, take a bunch of photos, you upload them, and you tag them as coming from bedroom 1 or bedroom 2 and so on. So now here we are, we've uploaded our photos. I can click on one to blow it up. Then I can start walking through them. I can write myself a note. I can also change the tags. I can rotate the photo. I can rename it. I can download it. I can share it. You can see who uploaded the photo and when. And even though I'm only working with images, this also lets you upload PDFs or Word docs or Excel files. Sometimes if you want to upload, like say, a floor planning file, then you can ask us to add the extension for that particular program to the list of acceptable file extensions. SMMware has a regular file manager where you can put those kind of photos that everybody on the team can see. You can also upload files into our restricted file manager, which might be, say, Other documents might have people sign and then scan and put in the system if you're not using our quoting or something like that. But only the people with higher permission levels can see the restricted files. While we're here, I'll point out that you can create tasks, write notes, you can log that calls happened, you can plan future calls. We'll get into the details of these later, but right now I just wanted to point out that this is one of the locations where you can use that functionality. So now I'm going back to the list of our sales leads. At the top of the page, we have a gray bar, which is a filter. And most of the times when you see a list in SMMware, there's going to be a filter. And oftentimes there's also export buttons. There might be a PDF button. Exporting means to export it as a CSV file, which in turn can be brought into Excel. We also offer you a sales report for the different status levels that you have in your system. You can see what quantity of those there are in the system at that status level, along with the dollar signs and the number of hours involved. And you can see the same information broken down as percentages. Whatever you do in the filter will apply to that sales report section, so you can answer questions about win rates and so on. From here, I'm going to look at jobs. And you can see that a job has many of the same fields as a sales lead, which should not be a surprise because they're kind of two sides of the same coin. We have our custom fields and the address. When you create a job from a sales lead, this information gets copied over. A job also has the file managers, task notes, and calls. We have a few more things to show you any invoices for this job and other things like that. Instead of a lead salesperson, we have a team lead. Instead of a sales lead status, we have a job status. We're also telling you how many actual hours you've put into this job so far versus the estimated hours, assuming that you did create a quote and put the hours in there. From here, I'd like to talk about your associates, how they can enter their hours and expenses. But along the way, we're going to look at a profile for a sales lead or for an associate. And what I'd like to point out here is the different kinds of permissions that you can give them. There's an overarching admin level in the system. And then there are some various permissions that are more granular, apply to a specific spot in the program. And then if you're in a part of the program where there is not a particular permission, then this master level one would apply. And the point is mainly that you have a variety of permissions so you can fine-tune what a given person can or cannot see. We also allow you to upload files where you have to have the HR permission in order to see them. You can create tasks, you can write notes. So SMMware can help you with some of your HR management tasks. One of the things we offer here is something called the skill code, and we're going to see this when we look at events. And the idea is that you can make up your own shorthand, and you can tell, in this case, this is somebody who's really good at packing because it's a scale of 1 to 5. Maybe they're not so good at sorting. They're a little bit better than average at organizing. And we offer you a reminder. You get a chance to define what those abbreviations mean. I should also point out that the question mark icon, I'm hovering over it without clicking, and that is called a tooltip. And SMMware has those sprinkled throughout. And if you have a question about where you are in the program, you find a question mark like that, and it'll give you some useful information. They're just all over the place. Next, I'd like to talk about pay levels. SMMware allows you to pay people based on 2 general approaches. You can pay people, the simple approach can distinguish between a team member and a team lead. We know that it's common for people to work on one job as a team member, then on another job as a team lead, and you want to be able to reflect that in your pay rates. So the simple approach can distinguish between team member and team lead. It can distinguish between weekends and weekdays. Our fancier approach is it uses job codes, where a given job code is tied to a pay level. By the way, you can define your own pay levels. A pay level is just a label. And then there's from the job code to the pay level to the actual rate is how you can determine in the end what somebody's going to get paid. So we wanted to create something that was flexible to accommodate all the situations that people had told us they have to account for within their systems. Let's take a look at recording hours. If I was not an admin, I would not have this drop down, but since I am, I can manage hours on behalf of someone other than myself. And I can put in the date of the work, tie it to a particular job, give it a start time and end time. You can type in a shorthand and the system will translate that. And you can mark it as billable or not. You can say that there was a break. Here's where you can put in a description. I can type something out at whatever length, but I can also pick from a variety of predefined phrases, and you get to customize those if you like. SMMware also allows you to charge your clients or pay your associates for travel based on miles or kilometers. And the formula for that is that you would put in the total miles here. And SMMware will say, okay, the first X number of miles are free, and then every mile after that is at a certain rate. This area at the top is where we could create new entries. If I worked on one job in the morning and one job in the afternoon, I can add another row and just take care of it all in one entry instead of having to, like rinse and repeat, do the same entry process over and again. As I said, the top area is where you can create new entries. The bottom area is for the already existing entries, so I can edit and delete them. If it's part of an invoice, then you can view it, but you won't be able to edit it anymore. And this approach assumes that you do the work, and then at the end of the day, you say, okay, let's say it's 3:45, and you say, okay, I started at 9, and I ended just now at 3:45. The other approach that SMMware supports is the idea of a time clock. So you'd pick the job and put in the description, you click the big old start button, get the clock going, and then at the end of the day, you would click the button again to stop it. From here, I'll look at what it's like to record expenses. Once again, the system wants to know the date that the expense was incurred and for what job. Not surprisingly, it wants to know how much. It wants to know which vendor you spent the money with. The radio button, reimbursable versus company, is not about whether the client is going to be paying you back. This is about whether your employee paid out of pocket and then you need to pay them back. So reimbursable means that the employee paid out of pocket. Once again, we can mark it as billable or not, and that affects whether you're going to charge the client. We need to put in a description. We can also, let's say we take a photo of the receipt with our phone. We can upload that receipt here and keep it stored with that expense. Again, the top area is where you can create new entries. The bottom area is where you can see the existing entries and you can edit or delete. You can also see the receipt that you uploaded. And again, I would encourage people to ask questions as they come to mind. You don't have to wait till the end or for a particular break. So I jumped over to the list of invoices. SMMware has different status levels for your invoices, and preliminary is a way of telling people in the company that whatever you do, don't send this out because it's not done. We also include the idea of team leads approving the invoices since they were the ones who were on site. They know which employees were there. They know which work was done. That is an optional feature. You don't have to use it. But if you see TL approved, the TL stands for team lead. So TL approved is team lead approved. We offer two different kinds of invoices: flat fee, where you just say, okay, this is an invoice for $1,000, or an itemized invoice where you're pulling in the individual line items. It pulls in the hours that have been worked. We give it a date range, and that way you can, if you do billing, say month by month, you can say, all right, this is the billing for this month, this is billing for the next month, and so on and so forth. This is the web-based view that you would see, along with the grand totals at the end. We also have the ability to see PDFs. SMMware offers 3 different formats for the PDFs, and you can choose which one you want at any given time. So the summary invoice, perhaps you have a client where the more detail you show them, the longer the conversation is going to be going over it and really nitpicking at it. So this one just has the grand totals for labor, expenses, and so on. It doesn't have any of the day-to-day details. Other times you might have a client where the more detail you show them, the more reassured they are that everything that you're charging them is justified and accounted for. So that makes for a shorter conversation that way. So here we can see all the line items for the hours that were worked, who did the work, what the work was, the hours. We also offer a roll-up version. So if you have a really long job and you've got 5 employees on site on a given day, it can get to be a really long invoice. So this roll-up version will roll all the line items for a given day into one line item with the grand total hours for that day. You can also email the invoice as an attachment. And once again, this text comes from the configuration. You can modify it here and now just to make it custom to this particular case. And of course, you can set the defaults from the settings editor. Now's a good time to just jump over to the settings editor for a moment. Went to admin, went down to settings. And each one of these lines is a group of settings. Let's take a look at the calendar. And I think the main point here is that there are quite a few settings in SMMware. You can do a lot to customize it to your needs. All right, so that's invoicing. So we've run through this section in blue, started talking about client records and sales lead records. We talked about jobs, hours and expenses, looked at invoices. We also touched on the file management. From here, we're going to jump over to look at the resources section, which is the organizations and contacts, this stuff in green. So here on the main menu, I'm jumping over to organizations and organizations and contacts. Organizations are companies, and contacts are the people who work at those companies. The list is divided into categories. So you can come here and say, well, I want to see all of my community CCRC people. And so on. So here's an example. Any given organization can be marked as being a vendor or not. If they are marked as a vendor, then they will appear in your list of expenses or list of vendors for expenses. There are 3 kinds of records that you'll find in the organization manager and in the resources generally. There's the traditional vendor where you spend money with them. There are also people that you recommend even if you don't spend money with them. So if your client asks you who's a good carpenter, who's a good plumber, then you may have somebody in your list, maybe under home improvement, that you can recommend. We also have under the organization, we have the list of contacts. This is one of them. You can just have as many as you needed. We can jump over to edit them from here or create a new one. Under the organization record, we have a file manager, so you can upload things such as, let's say you have a moving company, and they have a certificate of insurance, then it expires every year. You can put the certificate here under the file manager, and you can also create a task to remind yourself that you need a new copy of that certificate. And once again, we can write notes and log that calls happened. Here's where you can designate which categories the organization is part of. You can assign our organizations to jobs, and you can see which jobs this organization was part of. So you get a sense of how much business you've sent their way. Say there's a moving company that you've sent 30, 40 jobs over to. You'll see that here. Let's go ahead and look at a contact. What I'd like to point out here is that you can mark them as referring business to you. You can see which organization they're a part of. And you can also upload files, create tasks, write notes, and log calls here as well. You can also mark this as somebody who can act as a client representative, which might apply if they're a lawyer that gets involved in estate situations, something like that. And that is the resources section. It's the shortest part of the tour. From here, we're going to talk about the items in yellow. We're going to talk about tasks and notes and calls in more detail. And then we're going to get into the calendaring. So I'm going to go back to a job. It's one of the places where you can create tasks and notes and so on. Coming down to the section for tasks, I'll go ahead and create a new one. A task has a due date. You can set some reminders and give it a priority. You can assign it to someone. And SMMware handles the assignment in two ways. You can have a primary assignee and you can have secondary assignees. Some programs just have a list of people who are assigned, but our view to that matter is that if everybody is in charge, then nobody's in charge. So we break it down into one person who this task is fully assigned to, and then the secondary people that are also involved. I can put in a summary here. You can put in a longer description down below. Once you've worked with the system for a while, you'll realize you're putting in, say, the same 4 or 5 tasks at different stages of the project, and you will look for a way to handle the tasks in mass instead of one at a time. And our answer to that is called a task group. Each one of these buttons is something that you can set up in the configuration editor, and each button has more than one task underneath it. In this case, the pre-sales stuff has 1, 2, 3 tasks in it. If I don't need one of these tasks, I can click on the X and get rid of it. So now I just have this second one and this first one. You can see that the text is pre-assigned for you. You can still modify it. So again, our philosophy in SMMware is to give you a head start, allow you to define some defaults, but then allow you to change them for a particular situation. We can also look at the print version. So this is something that you can print out if you want to see everything all at once. Let's talk about notes. So a note is simpler than a task. It is just a summary and possibly the text body. So this text is pulled in from the defaults. And once again, the idea is to tell somebody this is the kind of information that we would like you to collect when you create a note. But you're not forcing things. If it doesn't apply in this case, they can just get rid of that altogether. You can see the summary here. You can see who wrote it. You can modify the values from here. And the idea is that if you're a basic level user, you cannot modify other people's notes. You can be confident that the note that you're reading, it was written by the person that it is attributed to. Next, we have the calls section. So you can either use this for a call that has just now come in and you want to take note of it. You can put in the summary and the notes as well. You can also use this to plan future calls, in which case you might want a reminder, and then it'll become important to put in a phone number. and to note whether you're calling them or they're calling you. And then once again, you can assign it to people, have secondary assignees, then you have your summary and your notes. There are various places in SMMware that you can have all this stuff, the tasks and notes and calls. And we've seen that under the jobs, we've seen it under clients. We can see that under the organizations and the contacts as well. From here, I will jump over to the home page. When we're looking at the sales leads, I talked about the status board and how it was going to appear on the home page. When we're looking at jobs, there's also a status board for that, although I didn't mention it at the time. The status board is your 30,000-foot view of how things are going for the company, and the status board for jobs is limited to those. We've got one status board for jobs, one for sales leads. And again, you can define your own tags, good, flag, and alerts. These are intended to say that if it's green, then you can go home at the end of the day and not worry about it. If it's yellow, maybe you have to talk to them soon, maybe tomorrow. And if it's red, then you probably have to take care of it before you can call it a day. And I can modify the text from here. The idea is that you can go through this list, you can modify the tag, you can modify the notes, and you go through all the way down through the list, make all your changes, and then you can hit the refresh button and it will reorder them according to the priorities. Here we have the status board for sales, and it works in much the same way. The hot lead, medium lead, cold lead is the default tag set, but you can modify that as well. We have the task center. By default, it'll show you tasks that are assigned directly to you. But if you create a task and assign it to somebody else, that's a delegated task, you can see those. If somebody assigned you to a task as secondary, you can see that list as well. If you are a high-level user, then you can see all the unfinished tasks across the entire company. And if you also have that level of permission, then you can see the recently finished tasks. Here's the call center, which works in much the same way with my calls, secondary, delegated, and so on. I had not mentioned it earlier, but there is an optional approval system where hours have to be approved before they can be pulled into invoices. And if you are a team lead on a job and there are some items that need approval, they would appear here. I can go view them and approve them or reject them. If you reject them, you have the opportunity to put in a reason why. The next section is for the employee who put in that hourly entry that got rejected. And they can go ahead and edit that and resubmit it to the system. And basically, the item will bounce back and forth between their list and the team lead's list until everybody agrees on how it should read. The next two sections, we have one section for your teams where you're the team lead and one for the jobs where you're the member. And we separate those because when you are the team lead, you do have more responsibilities. So we want to keep those by themselves. When we're looking at the contacts, I talked about the idea that somebody refers business to you. And this section will show you people where they are marked as sending you business. And it'll start with the people that have been the longest since you've spoken to them. Under the contact section, there is a date of last contact. And so in this case, it's been quite some time since I spoke to them. I would email them or phone them, and I could update the details. I can update the date of last contact from here to say today. The idea is that I work through this list, and then I can hit the refresh button. And when all of these people have relatively recent dates, then you can consider it done. Now we're getting into the calendaring. If you are using the invite approach, then you might have some invites here, and it'll give you a little detail about the events as well as the opportunity to say that you want to be part of it or not. And then at the bottom of the page, we have the schedule. This is it's called My Schedule because it's going to show you events that you are directly part of. It doesn't show you everything that's going on across the entire company. That is the master calendar. And if you have permissions, then you have this link. So now I'm looking at the master calendar. Within SMMware, the idea is that the color of the events will tell you something about it at a glance. And I've seen these tags used in different ways. You can customize these as far as the labels and the colors are concerned. The most basic approach is to distinguish between a job event and a sales lead related event, so that we have those there. Another approach to using these is to distinguish between the kinds of work being done. So this is packing and unpacking. This is a packing event, that's unpacking. We can also say who's in charge. So this dark blue must be Margot in charge. When I click on an event, I get a pop-up with more details. The base event, what's embedded in the page, has the name of the client and has a list of initials for the attendees. And then when you pop this open, you'll see more detail. You'll see the attendees' full names and the times they're going to be there. This one's marked as being the team lead. Notes on what's happening. Pardon me. We also have the address and a map link. When I click on the map link, it's going to open up that address in either Google Maps or Apple Maps, and it will give you your turn-by-turn GPS directions to get there. I'll go ahead and create a new event. I'm going to pick a tag. I'll tie this to a job. And then, of course, SMMware wants to know exactly which job. This text is being pulled from the configuration. And once again, the idea is to let you know what sort of information should be collected, but you're not tied to it. You can get rid of text that doesn't apply this time around. This icon is a house with an arrow pointing into it because that's where they're moving to. Clicking on that will insert this code, which when you go back to the main view becomes the map link. There can also be an icon with of a house with an arrow pointing out for that place that they're moving from. We can also mark an event as being tentative. So on the main view, this will have a little thin red outline around it. So people can be aware of it, but they also know that their things may change. They might want to keep a little bit closer eye on that one. Sometimes you make a very tiny change, like a spelling correction, and you don't want notifications going out to everybody. For events, you can send email and text notifications. So you don't want to just correct the spelling of a word and everybody gets this text message blown up their phones. So you can skip notifications. Within a given event, you can have a main contact. The notifications will use this person's phone and email at the bottom saying, hey, if you have any questions, here's who to talk to. You can also set an event lead. This is the person who is going to be on site and in charge. The main contact could be an office manager who doesn't actually go out on events, but they do all the planning. And then the event lead is definitely somebody who's going to be on site. Now we come to how you can manage your attendees. And SMMware has 3 different approaches: direct, invite, and availability. Each one of those has its own way of thinking, some assumptions. I'm going to start with direct. The assumption here is that you already had a conversation, maybe on the ride home or at a company meeting, so you already know who's going to do the work. You just need to formalize it and get it into the system. So their notifications are going to say you are assigned, as opposed to there being any question of whether they're coming or not. The next approach is invite-based, and we'll put in a team size. We can use the invite approach in a couple different ways. So maybe we invite 5 people when we only need 3. Maybe 4 of them say that they're interested, and the 5th one says, no, they're busy. And then out of the 4 that were interested, you can pick the 3 that you want for the actual final team, and they get their notifications. Another approach is to kind of shotgun it out there and invite everybody. And this is the first come, first serve approach. Some people do use that. And that way, the first 3 people who respond would get a notification saying, okay, your request is received. And then everybody after that would get a notification saying, I'm sorry, the team is full. Another approach is multiple rounds of invitations. So let's say I want 3 people and I invite the 3 that I would ideally like to do this work. Maybe they're particularly suited for it. And if one of them cannot do that, if one of them responds saying no, I can come back and add a fourth person. They will get their notification, and we won't bother the other three that are already have been invited. So you can go through multiple rounds of invitations. The third approach we call availability. The first two can be thought of as client-driven because you start off by talking to the client about when they want the work done, and then you come here and fill in the blanks in terms of having attendees do the work. Under this approach, you can think of this as being employee-driven. They enter the system, they go to a particular day, and they can say, well, I'm not going to work Monday morning, and I can't work Friday afternoon, and so on. And they can manipulate these, move them around in case they meant Thursday or something like that. When we come back here, that information is being incorporated. We have a timeline across the top. We have a list of employees down the left. And this green bar means that they are available for that amount of time. And if they were not available, there would just be a chunk missing. So you won't be able to assign someone to a day that they have already said they can't do the work. So now I'm going to start assigning people. I click on their green bar, creates a shift. I can modify the shift to match what it needs to be. I can add more people. Let's say that someone's going to, say they do some packing, and then one of these people is going to stick around and supervise the loading of the van. So they all arrive at the same time. And then these two people leave when the packing is done. The third person sticks around to supervise the loading. This is our fanciest approach, where you can have people arriving and leaving at different times, whereas the other two approaches, the direct and the invite, they do have an assumption that everybody's arriving and leaving together. I mentioned the idea of skill codes before, and this is a place where they get used. And you can use this information as part of your planning to make sure that the team members that you assign have the skills that you need them to have. This button here says skill definitions. This is a reminder for your particular abbreviations that you put into the configuration. We also have a planning tool. It's called the availability table. So what we have is days across the top. We have employees down the left. And this stretches out for like 12 weeks. And these time ranges tell you when people are available. If there's a background color, that means it's part of an actual event, and it has the name of the last name of the client. So you can use this in order to figure out who you can really look long term and get a sense of which days of which weeks might work. If somebody is designated in their associate profile that they can act as an event lead, they'll be in red right here. And the other thing you can do with this left column is, as you're forming up your team, if you have a long list, you can click on somebody, move them to the top, and you can form up your team so that you can review it and say, all right, these people, they truly do work for this event before you start committing to it. So I'll go ahead and skip the notifications. I've got some people assigned. Go ahead and save that. And that is a pretty good introduction to how our calendaring works. For the next discussion, I'll talk about integrations, and we can start with Google Calendar. This icon means that this system has been integrated with Google Calendar. And what that means is that you have a company calendar over at Google, which has all your events on it, and then you can share that with other people as you like. And so that is the Google Calendar integration. We also integrate with MailChimp, which is a mass emailing program, if you're not familiar with it. And SMMware will copy over clients and contacts and employees if you like. You can distinguish which ones get copied over and which ones don't. And MailChimp offers tags. SMMware will use those tags so you can say this is an employee, or this is a current past client or potential client. For the contacts, whatever categories they're in will become tags. So if I copy somebody from care management aids, then James, our friend James Dean, would be having a tag of care management aids, and so on. So when you go to send an email from MailChimp, you can use those tags to say, well, I just want to send out an email to all my realtors, or I just want to send out an email to my senior living community people, things like that. We also integrate with QuickBooks Online. And the way that works is that you can typically copy over information, say for payroll purposes. Let's come here and find somebody. Items that have already been copied over. So these are going to be hours and expenses. If it's already been copied over, it's going to have the green circle QB icon saying that okay, it's already been copied over. If it has not been copied over, it'll give you a button, QBO add. And I can copy over individual line items if I want to, but typically you're going to use the QBO add all button. So you would set the filter maybe to a payroll or like a pay period, and you would review the items, and then you just click on QBO add all. And you might also copy over invoices. You can see that these invoices have already been copied over. This one is ready to be copied over. So the system does not allow you to copy over an invoice that is only preliminary. We're waiting for it to be approved before you can do that. Also, when SMMware is copying things over to QuickBooks, there's kind of a hierarchy where if you're going to copy over hours, QuickBooks wants to know which client it was for and which employee put in the hours. And SMMware is smart enough to say that, hey, if we've never copied over the client before, we'll do that before we copy over the hours. So that way, by the time that you copy over the hours, all the mandatory information, the prerequisites have already been copied over. We integrate with QuickBooks Online and with QuickBooks Desktop. And we are currently working on integrating with payroll programs, both ADP and Gusto, which I think Gusto will be, the coding should be done probably by the start of February, and then there's an approval process, which it's not clear exactly how long that will take, but hopefully by the end of February we'll be live with Gusto integrations, and we're also working on ADP. Future development after that will include integration with Stripe, which is a payment service, so that you can start accepting payments. From here, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what it's like to sign up for SMMware. I'll just go to the main corporate site. I'll go to the pricing and sign up page. Just so you know what the pricing options are. Within SMMware, your subscription level is based on the number of active users. And you start off with $45 a month for up to 10 active users. And then it increases pretty modestly from there. For 20 active users, it's only another $5. And another 5 will get you 30, and so on. There is no annual commitment, and there's no setup fee. And from here, we can talk about what it's like to learn about SMMware. We have our online manuals. We have a manual for the administrators, team leads, and team members. Going back to the SMMware program itself, we have context-sensitive help. Not every single page has its own help, but here's one for the associate manager. And then from there, in addition to the manuals, we have our YouTube channel. You just go to youtube.com/SMMware. And here we have about 30 or so videos. Some of them are high level, and some of them are very topic specific, so that you can say, have 10 minutes learning just about how to use e-signing, or 10 minutes about how to enter your hours, things like that. And above all that, when you want the personal touch, we have Liz, who is our accredited trainer. She's with us here today. Maybe say hello again, Liz, in the chat. And she is separate from SMMware, but I've always gotten extremely good reviews from everybody who's worked with her. So she can tell you not just the path to click through SMMware to get to certain things. She can help you plan how you want to customize your lists, Do you want to use job codes? What job codes do you want to use and set up and so on? So she's very helpful in terms of getting your site up and running. When it comes to somebody who is signed up for SMMware, a question is how to get going quickly. And you can import information into SMMware. Getting some data into the system is great for getting things moving. You can integrate or you can import data from a CSV file. I'm going to admin, go down to import content. If you're integrating with QuickBooks, you can set that up and then you can import directly from QuickBooks. You can bring in a list of clients, a list of employees, a list of vendors, and so on. So that is a way to kind of get your feet wet, because there's nothing like having some data in the system to help you get things moving. So again, we offer a variety of ways for you to learn more about SMMware, and of course, Liz offers the personal touch. And we'd love to see you somebody sign up who gets use out of the system and can get moving quickly one way or another. Either if you're a self-learner, you can use the manuals and the YouTubes, and then you can also have Liz help you out. So that is a pretty good overview of what the SMMware features, and happy to answer any questions that you have. So Liz, you are still at $50 an hour, I believe, as I recall. And then usually there's a couple of hours in a package to cover various things, various topics to get you going. So for Valerie, for the webinars like this, there's of course not a cost, and then you would work with Liz to talk about your particular training program, and you can customize it exactly what topics you cover and so on when you talk with Liz. So if anybody has any questions that come up later after this is over, feel free to give us a shout. We have our phone number here on the website, as well as the contact page, or you can email me later on, either way. But I thank you for your time and hope everybody's keeping warm and you have a great rest of the day. Thanks again for joining me.